Sophie Cunningham showed that she is, the old Caitlin Clark enforcer. She is the Caitlin Clark enforcer. That has been shown. She is the enforcer that the Fever have needed for the last year, and she has responded. She has responded.
What happens when Sophie Cunningham trades in her basketball for a bodyguard badge, acting like she's personally hired to protect Caitlin Clark? Absolute madness. We're talking full-blown demolition on the court, locker room drama igniting like fireworks, and Sophie ready to bring the smoke as if it's her full-time job.
Sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, is anybody on this team gonna stand up for Caitlin Clark? JC Sheldon grabbing Caitlin Clark all game, clawing at her. It's like tonight was a brawl, folks. Tonight was a brawl, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, is anybody on this team going to stand up for? And Sophie Cunningham.
When Sophie Cunningham stepped onto the court, nobody expected the chaos that was about to unfold. This wasn't basketball, it was an all-out war, a raw showdown that turned the WNBA into the Wild West. Caitlin Clark had a target on her back, and Sophie took it personally. Forget assists and rebounds, Sophie wasn't here to play, she was here to enforce. She transformed from teammate to bodyguard, instantly becoming the fiercest protector the Indiana Fever could ever ask for. Tempers flared, fists almost flew, and social media erupted, calling this the craziest game in WNBA history. But what triggered Sophie to snap, igniting a night of absolute pandemonium? Buckle up, because this isn't just another rivalry. This is the moment Sophie Cunningham declared war on the entire league.
Let's start with the play that set off the entire night. So as you guys can see here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin Clark. She swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin Clark nudges her off because JC stays in her face. And then Tina Charles runs over and is kind of wagging her finger in Caitlin Clark's face. And then Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere and chucks her to the floor. Now let's watch this in slow motion. Here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin, swipes her in the face. There's one. Going for the ball, swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin's gonna have to start wearing goggles. And then Caitlin pushes her off of her, like, why are you still in my face? Marina Mabrey, bat out of hell, chucks Caitlin Clark.
But it all started with one explosive play that set everything off. Picture this. Caitlin Clark, heavily guarded by JC Sheldon, fighting through relentless pressure all night. Then suddenly, Sheldon swipes directly at Caitlin's face, hitting her squarely in the eye. Caitlin, stunned and frustrated, pushes Sheldon away, clearly asking, "Why are you still in my face?" But before she can even process what happened, Tina Charles storms in, wagging her finger aggressively in Caitlin's face. And then, as if this wasn't already chaotic enough, Marina Mabrey bolts onto the scene like a missile out of nowhere, violently chucking Caitlin to the floor.
And then Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere and chucks her to the floor. Now let's watch this in slow motion. Here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin, swipes her in the face. There's one. Going for the ball, swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin's gonna have to start wearing goggles. And then Caitlin pushes her off of her, like, why are you still in my face? Marina Mabrey, bat out of hell, chucks Caitlin Clark to the ground.
You'd think this blatant aggression would trigger immediate action from officials, right? Wrong. Instead, the refs barely lift a finger, handing out mild technical fouls, leaving fans and commentators utterly baffled. Social media exploded, fans fuming that Caitlin Clark had become open season for dirty plays. Memes, outrage, and fury poured out instantly. But as bad as this sequence was, this was only the tip of the iceberg, because Sophie Cunningham was watching closely, and she was about to flip the entire game upside down.
Welcome to WNBA Fight Night, or as some people are saying, WNBA Raw. What a game that was. We had it all. We had basketball, we had fighting, we had blonde on blonde crime. Oh, such an epic. Oh, goodness. But at the end of the day, it resulted in an Indiana Fever W, 88 71, taking care of business.
And when Sophie Cunningham flipped that switch, the entire arena knew it. She didn't just step onto the court, she stormed into battle. Sophie wasn't interested in dribbling through screens or sinking easy threes. She was laser focused on sending a clear, unmistakable message. Touch Caitlyn again and you'll regret it. The moment Sheldon tried to streak down the floor, Sophie wrapped her up like a seasoned MMA fighter, instantly igniting absolute chaos.
Now, let's start here. This is, of course, Sophie and Sheldon going down the floor. Sophie tries to wrap her up, and Sheldon gets to the floor, and all hell breaks loose. And Sophie said, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. We'll go. We'll go. So there's that. That, of course, was all a byproduct of this right here, folks. And I mean, when I tell you social media is setting the WNBA on fire right now, not in a good way, that's the understatement.
The crowd exploded, players rushed in, and tempers flared to a boiling point. Suddenly, the basketball court resembled a ring, tension soaring so high you could feel it through your screen. Sophie wasn't acting as a teammate anymore. She transformed into a human firewall, daring opponents to cross her perimeter with a look that promised immediate consequences. Referees scrambled to regain control, but Sophie had already made her point crystal clear. Messing with Caitlin Clark was now officially hazardous to your health. The message was loud, unapologetic, and delivered with fury. But if you think this was just about a single foul, you're dead wrong, because what Sophie did next sent shockwaves through social media and changed the narrative of the entire season.
I feel good, and Sophie Cunningham put me out on a high note, folks. I didn't even say, Ben, calm down, regroup. I didn't even say that. Let's get straight to the play. Everybody, the plays everybody is talking about. First off, Marina Mabrey body checking Caitlin Clark to the ground. Jacy Sheldon all over her, riding her. Pokes Caitlin Clark in the eye. Oh man, Caitlin Clark needs to start wearing goggles, folks. Caitlin Clark's gonna need to start wearing goggles. Bumps up on Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark says, "Get your hands off me!" And then here comes Marina Mabrey. Boom! Exploding Caitlin Clark like a safety coming downhill in the NFL. There was no flop there.
Social media didn't just react, it detonated. Within minutes, Sophie Cunningham became the most talked about player online, trending worldwide as memes flooded timelines. Fans hailed her as a legend, dubbing her Caitlin's personal bodyguard and the enforcer the league desperately needed. Clips of the chaos went viral, replayed on loop with captions like "Sophie chose violence today" and "WNBA meets WWE."
Once again, WNBA, we're not talking about your basketball. We're talking about the WNBA WWE Raw circus that you got going on right now. And we all know this incident with Sophie stems.
But not everyone was amused. Controversy sparked debates on Twitter, with thousands slamming the refs for failing to protect Caitlin. Fans demanded accountability from WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, criticizing the league's officiating for allowing their brightest star to be targeted without repercussions. Sophie's aggressive stance wasn't just appreciated, it became a rallying cry, a clear statement that enough was enough. Yet amidst all the viral noise and heated arguments, one question lingered in everyone's mind. Why did it take Sophie Cunningham stepping up for the league's biggest problem to finally come to light? The answer to that question isn't pretty, and it's exactly what pushed Sophie to her breaking point. For Sophie Cunningham, this wasn't just another game, it was personal. Caitlin Clark had faced relentless targeting all season, with defenders treating her like a punching bag rather than a superstar. Yet somehow the referees consistently turned a blind eye. Sophie saw the league's brightest talent being repeatedly roughed up without protection, and it triggered something deeper inside her, something primal.
All right, enough is enough. You know, at some point, the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected. And that is certainly the case with the way things around Caitlin Clark are officiated. This is a constant problem now. You know, it is something that since the beginning, I've kind of backed off on, because physical play is a part of sports. You know, going after a superstar and trying to rough them up a little bit to get in their head is a part of sports. But when it crosses the line, The referees need to do their job.
When the league's officiating hit rock bottom that night, handing Caitlyn a technical foul after she'd been poked in the eye and slammed onto the floor, Sophie had seen enough. To her, it wasn't just about standing up for a teammate, it was about exposing a deeper issue: the league's alarming failure to protect its most valuable players.
WNBA, Kathy Engelberg. Hello, Earth to Kathy Engelberg. Are you gonna step in and do something about this trash that's going on? Players are getting assaulted on the floor. Like, come on, Caitlin Clark could have really got injured right there, y'all. She could have really got injured by these haters, these jealous, hating players. They just jealous and hating, bro. She didn't even get ejected.
Sophie's actions sent a clear message straight to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and league officials everywhere. If they wouldn't do their jobs, Sophie would handle it herself. She wasn't looking for clout or social media fame. This was about respect, safety, and integrity. The WNBA's silence spoke volumes, and Sophie decided it was time to break that silence herself. But what she did next didn't just shift momentum. It became an iconic moment that set an unspoken standard for anyone thinking about testing Caitlin Clark again.
We all know this incident with Sophie stems from the incident that was clearly not handled correctly by the WNBA and the referees.
Sophie Cunningham wasn't playing defense anymore. She was enforcing boundaries. She became judge, jury, and executioner, fiercely patrolling the court with a demeanor that warned opponents to stay away from Caitlin Clark. If anyone so much as glanced Caitlin's way with malicious intent, Sophie was already there, glaring like a hawk ready to swoop. Opposing teams quickly realized they weren't dealing with a regular opponent. They were dealing with a vigilante determined to deliver instant justice. Players suddenly backed off, intimidated not just by Sophie's physical presence, but by her relentless determination. She radiated an energy that screamed, "Cross this line and you'll regret it immediately." Opponents who had bullied Caitlin all season suddenly reconsidered their tactics. Sophie's mere existence on the floor forced teams to abandon their cheap shots and rethink their strategies.
By the way, this is what she posted as soon as it happened. This is in the locker room. This is before the game ended. Before the game ended. She comes out in the locker room and posts this. Like, what are we doing?
Before the game had even ended, Sophie Cunningham took to social media and fired off a post that sent shockwaves through the league. It wasn't subtle, it was a direct challenge, unapologetic and fierce, showing her standing defiantly in the locker room, ready for any and all consequences. Fans went wild, praising Sophie for stepping up when nobody else would. She instantly became a symbol, not just of defiance, but of justice. Teams around the WNBA got the message loud and clear. Going after Caitlin Clark would now come at a steep price. Sophie had officially taken matters into her own hands, doing what the league refused to. Opposing players who previously saw Caitlin as an easy target suddenly thought twice, knowing Sophie was watching closely, ready to intervene at any sign of trouble.
Caitlin Clark, please leave this league and let it crumble. Please, this league does not deserve you. All this hate from these black people, all this hate from these lesbians, these people in the media, just go play basketball somewhere else. Your fans will follow you. We will follow you wherever you go. But let this shit crumble and burn to the ground, man. Let the viewership drop below 50%. Let them lose hundreds of millions of dollars again, man. Let them go back into irrelevancy. Nobody giving a damn about none of these players. Just leave.
But here's the kicker. This wasn't just Sophie protecting her teammate. It was Sophie Cunningham redefining the role of protector in modern sports. She wasn't just Caitlin's enforcer. She was the NBA's unofficial alarm system, signaling that aggression towards star players would no longer be tolerated without swift, forceful response. And just like that, Sophie Cunningham wasn't merely a player anymore. She had become a league-wide phenomenon. Sophie Cunningham had just reshaped the entire dynamic of the WNBA. She didn't just set a new standard, she enforced it with such intensity that teams across the league had to take notice. Overnight, Sophie's name became synonymous with protection, toughness, and relentless loyalty. Players who used to freely take shots at Caitlin Clark now hesitated, understanding clearly that stepping over the line would instantly summon Sophie's wrath.
She went and got revenge. Sophie Cunningham, JC Sheldon's driving to the basket. Sophie Cunningham takes her down. Normal enough take foul. Lindsay Allen gets her by the neck. Then JC Sheldon goes at her, and Sophie Cunningham, by the way, Sophie Cunningham, if she wanted to, it looked like Sophie Cunningham was about to throw some knees at her. Like, she had her in an MMA hold. Like, Sophie Cunningham could have got this MMA fight ended. She could have got this fight ended quickly.
This fierce loyalty wasn't something Sophie learned. It was ingrained deep within her character. Her teammates loved her for it, opponents respected her for it, and fans couldn't get enough of it. The era of unchecked aggression against star players had officially ended. Sophie's fearless stance forced the league into the uncomfortable spotlight, highlighting a deep-rooted issue that had gone ignored far too long. But while the league scrambled for answers, Sophie stood firm, unapologetic, ready to step in again whenever necessary. She wasn't chasing headlines or endorsements. This was about principle. Her actions spoke louder than any press conference ever could, leaving the entire WNBA community buzzing with one unforgettable message. As long as Sophie Cunningham was around, nobody would lay a finger on Caitlin Clark without consequence.
So much happened in this game, but first, let's talk about Sophie and JC. All right, JC Sheldon. My goodness, dog. My goodness. Now, honestly, I felt like Sophie might have wanted a piece of JC after the Caitlin Clark and JC kind of scuffle going on, right? Then this happened.
But the real victory wasn't just about standing up to bullies on the court, it was about forcing a spotlight on the league's glaring issues. Sophie's actions sparked crucial conversations that had been long overdue, leaving the WNBA scrambling to address what they'd ignored for too long. As the world watched, Sophie Cunningham had officially evolved from player to protector, setting an entirely new standard in sports. And while the league may not love her approach, fans now know the truth. Sophie Cunningham is exactly the hero the WNBA never asked for, but desperately needed. At the end of the day, Sophie Cunningham wasn't just another player. She became the heartbeat of a new WNBA era. She turned controversy into a statement, aggression into protection, and chaos into clarity. By standing fearlessly between Caitlin Clark and the threats around her, Sophie single-handedly forced the league to acknowledge its shortcomings. And while the WNBA might prefer silence and politeness, Sophie refused to back down or play nice. Now, every time Sophie steps onto the court, teams will pause and reconsider before taking any cheap shots. She isn't just playing basketball, she's patrolling it. Sophie Cunningham redefined what it means to be a teammate, setting a new standard of loyalty and courage that resonated deeply with fans everywhere. Because Sophie's message was clear. If the league won't protect its stars, she'll gladly take up that role. And now every team across the WNBA knows exactly what happens when you mess with Caitlin Clark. You get Sophie Cunningham, fierce, unapologetic, and ready for war. If you stand with Sophie Cunningham and support her fearless approach, comment Enforcer Sophie below, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another moment from the wildest, boldest player the WNBA has ever seen.